Welcome to Atlanta Live. We are so excited about our guest tonight. We have Sherry, who's cooking up something in the kitchen, and we have the prayer lines that are open. I'm your host, Jeneen Hammond. To get this thing started, we are going to welcome Jordan. So God bless you. Lean in and see what God's going to do.
Amen, amen.
Amen.
All right, we're going to do our first song called My Way Home.
Take me back where I belong. Take me back real soon, my Lord. Take me back where I
Here with Sue Becker, and Sue is the founder of Bread Beckers. Now you might be wondering, what is Bread Beckers? And I think the one to tell you that and explain it is Sue Becker. Sue, thanks for being with us here.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here.
You know, I've been to your cooking class, loved it. I love your bread. But tell me, how did you come about to have Bread Beckers? You're the founder, exactly.
Yes, my husband and I.
Now wait, I know that your background is in nutrition, science, biochemistry,
Physiology.
yes. And you used to read, is it medical journals?
Yes, I love it. Yes,
Is that how you got it?
Actually, I'm a food science major,
Right,
not necessarily a nutrition degree, but I have a passion for understanding how the body works and physiology and biochemistry, and just love studying the body, what its nutritional needs are. So even after graduating from the University of Georgia with a degree in food science, I just continued to study the body, sickness, disease, how it relates to the food that we're eating.
Is that why you started Bread Beckers?
In a way, I was a young mother. After graduating from college, I worked for Kraft Foods for almost 5 years as a food microbiologist, and then started having children. And
Six. She has six,
no,
right?
I have 9.
You have 9?
Yes, seven biological, and then 2 we adopted. So I just continued, like I said, studying nutrition and feeding my family the best I knew how. Healthy food, real food. That's what I tell people. We ate real food. And in 1991, with 5 young children at home and a homeschooling mom and baking and fixing food, you know, making healthy food for my family, real food, I was introduced to a healthy eating concept that I had never thought of that radically changed my life and the health of our family. And it was the concept of milling our own grain to make our own flour, to make our own bread. And I studied it a little bit. I read some information. I learned, you know, about the nutritional benefits of whole grains. We bought a grain mill, and I started making our bread.
But how did you learn about a grain mill? I mean, how many of us out here know about a grain mill and about making our own bread and the
right?
But there are so many benefits of making our, and just the vitamins, you know, and not having bread that's been on a shelf forever,
that won't spoil.
And
not even what's called whole grain.
Just the ingredients in bread that we buy.
The original information that came into my hands was particularly about milling grain and about the common diseases that plague this nation, how it's directly related to our consumption of the commercially processed bread and flour. It introduced me to the idea of there's an in-home flour mill, which we're going to look at in just a little bit, and how easy it is. And
but you're saying diseases.
Yes.
Are you talking like fatigue, irritable bowel?
Yes, yes. Here's what I learned. I learned that whole grains are the most nutrient-dense food that God has given us. They are left whole and intact. They're a seed. They're storable. All their vitality, all their nutritional value, if the grain is left whole and stored, it's just as nutritious today as it will be 1,000 years from now.
But the argument about the bread, though, is that you gain weight. Is that a myth?
That's a myth. Real whole grains, real bread fills you up. It satisfies you. But that's only when the flour is freshly milled that the nutritional value is at its maximum. Once the flour is milled, it starts deteriorating and it starts spoiling.
Yes.
And so, you know, prior to the 1900s, most people in this country baked their bread at home. They either had the capacity to mill it themselves or they bought flour from the local miller. But in the early 1900s, it was discovered if we sift the very nutrient-rich bran away, the oil-laden germ away, and leave only the white flour part, then the flour won't spoil, it won't go rancid, it won't oxidize. And so that led to the invention of these huge steel rolling mills, and white flour, white bread came on the scene.
Yes.
And virtually, there's no nutritional nutrients, vitamins, minerals, fatty acids in the white flour. It's protein and starch, which we need, but all, like I said, the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, fiber, the big thing. So I was convinced, I mean, with my background, with my studies, with with my interest. I knew that what I was reading was correct. We bought a grain mill, brought it into our home.
And we're going to do that in just a moment. We're going to go back to the talk set, but we're going to come back with Sue in just a moment. Stay with us.
Well, thank you so much, Sherry and Sue Becker in the kitchen making bread. I'm excited to see how that turns out. I don't know about you. I am looking forward to our guests continuing. I know that you enjoyed them for their first set. We're excited that they're going to be playing for us again. So please put your hands together. I'm going to put my hands together for the Jordan B Band singing Crossfire.
I was standing on the corner, watching the cars go by, when a man came up to me. He said, son, you need a ride. There's a party going on, and it's getting kind of late. Headed right there, don't hesitate. Stuck in a crossfire. 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 When we got to the party, there were people hanging around, things going on I ain't never seen again, you know. But I said to myself, I don't fit in. Sin was all around. I said, hey, can't do it again. Stuck in a crossfire. 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 Help me, Father, oh Lord, for the things that I have done. Didn't know the implication. I was looking for some fun. Now that I know, I am ashamed for all those sinful days and the debt you paid. Stuck in a crossfire. 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 I said the crossfire. 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 Crossfire.
As promised, I'm here back on the set in our kitchen with Sue Becker of Bread Beckers. She is the founder of Bread Beckers. And Sue, what a beautiful display you have here. And I want to tell you, first of all, I got my eye on one of those brownies.
You can have one.
Yeah, all right. Can I have two?
Yes, ma'am, you can. And the nice thing about it is they're good for you.
They're good for you. Now, you're not going to just cook muffins right now for us, but you're going to explain also some of the nutrients that's in the food, maybe some of the items that you're using here about your mealing.
Yes.
So first of all, we're going to start with muffins.
Yes, we're going to make some muffins. And I've got here some grains. These are different types of wheat. This is soft wheat that is great for making cakes and cookies and pies and biscuits here in the South. And these are hard wheats here that are great for making yeast bread. You have to have a high protein flour to make yeast bread. And we'll do that another time. And then corn. The little grain mill that I have will grind any kind of dry grain or bean into flour. Yes. So if you want cornbread, you just grind the corn.
Which in the South, you're going to have cornbread.
And the purpose of that is once the flour is milled, once the grain is milled into flour, all the vitamins and minerals and the oils that are in the bran portion and the germ portion, they're now exposed to the air. So oxidation begins to take place. We've all seen oxidation. That may sound like a scientific term, but if you've ever cut an apple and have it turn dark, that's oxidation. If you ever smelled oil that's gone rancid, that's oxidation. So that's exactly what begins to happen. As soon as the flour is milled, these nutrients start breaking down. So really, truly, only freshly milled flour has your optimum nutritional value.
So that's why bread on the shelves loses over days more and more of the nutrients?
It's not so much the bread, because once the bread is baked, the nutritional loss is minimal, but it's what they've done to the flour to make that bread. In the early 1900s, they started sifting the bran and germ away from the white flour, because that's what's oxidizing, that's what's going rancid, that's what's making the flour spoil. Also, it's fiber, so they're like, we can make fluffier cakes and bread if we take all that bran and germ out, all that fiber out, and leave only that fluffy white flour. So white flour came on the scene in the early 1900s, and the health of America has been deteriorating ever since.
Could I ask you this question? Do you think that's where gluten-free has come from? Because that's come on the scene the last, 3 years?
Yes.
And then how about celiac?
Yes.
Can people with celiac eat fresh whole grain milled bread?
Not a true genetic celiac. Celiac is actually a genetic disease, and what people are being diagnosed with celiac today is a non-genetic celiac disease. And that's from the heavy consumption of low-fiber foods such as white bread. Even the wheat bread in the store, they only recombine some of the bran and germ with the white flour, and then they add other things that are, gluten. They add pure gluten, which is in the white flour portion. So what we've got to realize is 100 years now, we've been eating basically gluten and starch. And even if we switch to whole grains, it's lots of gluten. Then, of course, antibiotics, those destroy our good organisms in our gut. So what's exciting is people that aren't true genetic celiacs, most of the time they can eat this bread instantly, and their pain, their irritable bowel all stops. So
okay, in this muffin here, I'm looking at this grain here, there are beans. I see lima beans.
This is a great recipe that God gave us in Ezekiel chapter 4. God tells the prophet Ezekiel to take wheat, spelt, barley, millet, lentils, and beans, put them into one vessel and grind them and make cake out of it. So we have done that for you. We have combined some of the wheat, spelt, barley, millet, lentils, and beans. There's recipes in my cookbook for Ezekiel bread. But the cool thing about the Ezekiel mix is grains are a little bit low in an amino acid, which is part of your protein, is lysine. Beans have lysine.
Which helps cold sores.
Yes, exactly. Yes, a lot of us know about lysine.
Yes.
Beans are a little bit low in methionine. Grains are high in methionine. So the combination of grains and beans here makes this a perfect protein. And if you read the scripture, you learn that Ezekiel lived over 400 days off of what appears to be an 8-ounce cake of this Ezekiel bread and a quart of water every day. So I love using this not just for the bread the recipe in my book, but for making muffins, for making pancakes. And the delicious brownies are made with the Ezekiel flour.
Pancakes.
Yeah.
You're going to make, all right.
So, I tell everybody, this is a complete protein wrapped in chocolate. What more can you ask for?
Oh my goodness, and all of us love brownies, Sue.
Yes,
You know that.
yes. So why
Something
not
good
make them
for
healthy?
you that tastes good.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
holidays are coming. People don't have to compromise nutrition. Like I said earlier, grains are the most nutrient-dense food God has given us. Pound for pound, this is what people don't understand. Ounce for ounce, there's more nutrition in an ounce of grain than in an ounce of steak, fruits, vegetables, any other food that out there. Grains are a complete food.
So are you saying then you don't gain weight?
No.
You
Because the
don't.
fiber fills you up and satisfies you. Many, many testimonies, people find they lose weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Now, one thing before you start, I want to ask you: are one of these your baking? Is it
Yes.
baking soda?
Yeah. So this
but,
is a.
But your baking soda is the aluminum free.
The baking powder is the aluminum-free baking powder.
which is important.
Yes,
important.
you want that. Aluminum is a dough enhancer, so they started putting that in there. And then the baking soda is pretty basic. This is natural mined mineral salt. You can see the specks in there. This is mined from the ground. Most
That's
people
iodine in there.
Well,
yes.
different minerals, trace minerals.
Yes.
Most people don't realize that the salt you're buying in the store is very refined. They strip all those trace minerals out so they can sell that to another industry.
Yes.
And give you sodium chloride.
Yeah.
And then it's heat treated so it doesn't readily absorb moisture, so that when it rains it pours. And
it's so bad for you.
and it is, it is. So we only use natural mined mineral salt. Now I've got measured here together extra virgin olive oil. It's truly extra virgin olive oil. We get it from Greece, the Isle of Crete, and then raw unpasteurized honey. So I use no refined sugars, sweeteners, no refined flour. We're going to make this 100% whole grain by grinding it fresh ourselves.
Well, now I want to ask the cameraman, can you see this measuring cup?
Oh yeah,
It's so
it's fun.
awesome.
Yes.
It's here. You're looking here, and you can see what you have instead of
Having to get down on the side.
and look. You can see. I think that's marvelous.
Having the right tools makes
a
all
big
the difference in the world.
Yes.
And it's a little bit investment in the beginning, but when you're going to start making your own bread and your own food for your family, it really
it's
helps.
worth it, though.
It is.
It's so worth it. Okay. Let's mill.
So the key is the grain mill. You can make lots of food by hand. A lot of people think, oh, do I need a mixer? Do I need a bread machine? No. Cakes, cookies, muffins, biscuits, pancakes, those are all just whipped up with a wire whisk in a bowl. So it's so easy to use. I know people think, oh my gosh, she wants me to start making all of my own bread and grinding my own wheat. And but I want you to see how fast and easy. This mill will grind about a pound in less than 30 seconds.
And how much will that make, though, Sue? What could you make out of a pound of ground wheat?
Well, a pound of wheat is about 2 cups, so that's going to make about 3 cups of flour.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about a cup and a half more. A cup of grain makes about a cup and a half of flour. Pound for pound is the same.
Okay.
So, all right. So we just attach the canister here by pushing that hose into the little opening there. Now we're gonna turn it on. That's our coarseness, fineness dial. It's gonna make a little noise. We're gonna turn it on. We're gonna grind our grains and beans into this wonderful, nutritious flour. You can see how it's just dropping down in there.
And it goes right in your
into the flour canister.
Yeah, that's
so I
and not a bunch of flour.
Nope. It's very
around.
clean. It's very efficient. The fun thing is it cleans itself. The milling heads you never have to break this apart and clean it. And in just a minute, you'll hear the pitch kind of change. And we just let it run a second or two. And that's it.
That's it.
You can do that.
Easy.
Yes, yes. I kind of tease and tell people, I said, if you cook, this is as easy as taking your flour canister off.
Itself. That's a selling point.
That's a selling point. So anyway, so there is our freshly milled flour. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful.
You can see the
brand.
Yes, in there.
Yep.
Oh,
and that's what they
color of
sift
it.
out to leave us just the white flour.
It just looks. It just looks so different.
It does.
Sue.
It's fluffy and nice.
Yes.
So now this is a quick bread. Quick breads, listen, they stir up in 5 minutes, they bake in 15. You can do this. I know yeast bread, especially for Southerners, is kind of intimidating. My mother was very, very Southern, worked her way through school making biscuits. She looked at me when I started making bread and she said, yeast bread scares me. And so for Southerners, just stick with the muffins then and the pancakes. So we're gonna.
But do you get the thing that's the women that say, oh, I just don't have time. I've got kids. I've got this, that. But you have 9.
I have 9 children. I started when I had 5 and went on to have number 6 and then number 7. I homeschooled my children. We started our business 25 years ago when I had 6 children. And you can do this. You can. You just work it into your time frame. But here's the deal. The health benefits far outweigh. I mean, in the first day, I noticed a difference. The mill came into our home. I milled flour. I made bread. And my bowel issues were resolved by the morning.
Really?
And I could tell I had more energy.
Yeah.
Then in the first month, I noticed energy levels increased. Constipation was gone. My dependence on antihistamines went totally away. Most America lives on antihistamines.
Yes.
I haven't had one in 26 years. Not any kind. Decongestant antihistamine.
Gosh, see, that's wonderful.
My sugar cravings. You know, we talk about weight gain. Most of us are addicted to sugar. We crave. Those went completely away. My frequent headaches, I used to have migraines, went away. One of my children's warts went away, and I always get people laugh at that one. But warts are a virus, and, and people don't understand that. And so when this boosts your immune system, you fight the warts. Yes, we've had,
I think that would help your complexion also.
And then, you know, with a mom with 6 children at home, within the first month, I began to notice we didn't have snotty noses, ear infections, chronically sick. You know how when you have a big family, you go to church on Sunday, somebody's sick, one of them gets it, and oh gosh, the whole family. Yeah, you just can't go to church for the next 6 months.
Absolutely.
You know how it is.
Yes, I do.
So this is a quick bread, and this is so easy to mix up. Wire whisk in a bowl. So typically with quick breads, they're leavened by baking powder, baking soda. So we're just going to add a teaspoon of baking soda, and I keep my recipes simple. This was my go-to. Okay. This was what got me through life a lot of times. It's easy to adjust and adapt. In fact, we're going to vary this very basic recipe by adding some pumpkin here in just a minute. But baking powder, a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt. I don't know why muffin recipes make that do half a teaspoon of soda, a teaspoon of baking powder, a quarter teaspoon of salt. Why? A teaspoon of each works. So you'll have this recipe memorized shortly. Now, that's the basic, but I'm going to add a little pumpkin pie spice because we're going to add some pumpkin here.
But now this recipe is in your book.
It is in the book.
A lot of your recipes are, right?
Yes, and they can get that on breadbeckers.com. So with all quick breads, you just whisk together your dry ingredients. You want to make sure that baking powder, baking soda is all whisked in before you add your wets because they'll clump up, and you just want to make sure it gets mixed in. So now we're going to add a half a cup of oil and a half a cup of honey. I measured my oil
honey
first.
Is in there.
Yep, it is. I measured my oil first and then just put my honey on top, and since it's equal amounts, I could just do that. So I'm just going to pour it in the well in the center. Putting the oil in there first helps that to slide on down. Because it's been sitting a few minutes, it doesn't come out quite as easily, but we can just help it along.
So honey is a lot better than sugar.
You know, the Bible tells us, eat honey because it's good. Pleasant words are like honeycomb, healing to the mind and the body.
Yes.
So we're going to just do that. We're going to add our egg here. Okay. We're going to add our milk. This is buttermilk, actually, because with baking soda, we want the acid of the buttermilk. Will help it.
You? Yes.
And I'm going to add a cup of pumpkin. Pumpkin puree, not pumpkin pie mix, but pumpkin puree. You can either cook your own or buy the already in the store. And now, to give it a little orange zest, I'm going to add just a little bit of orange zest. If you've never zested, start adding it to everything.
Really?
It just perks up the whole dish. So we'll just do about a half of this orange in the zest, okay? And then we're going to just whisk this all together.
That looks already beautiful.
Oh, and doesn't it smell delicious?
Oh, yes. I wish the audience could just smell it. The aroma is magnificent.
Now, even the busiest person can do this, right?
Yes. Oh, goodness, yes.
Okay, and now we'll just...
Well, I make biscuits. I make cornbread.
Yep.
Why not?
Yep. Now we'll just add in our dried cranberries. I love these cranberries. They're organic, and instead of being heavily sweetened with sugar, they're infused with apple juice. Yeah.
Oh, if we would all just go back to things like that.
So now we can just bring it over here My favorite tool.
That's
not
an ice cream scooper.
Not just for ice cream.
No.
It's for measuring and scooping out the muffin batter. And now we just this makes about a dozen. We'll just scoop some in here.
You got this down pat.
Done it a time or two. And muffins were my go-to. You know, like I said earlier, sometimes I didn't get yeast bread made, you know, and we're going to see how easy it is to make yeast bread, but sometimes it just didn't happen. So tonight's muffins had to look a little different than this morning's muffins. So I just used corn in this basic recipe, milled it into flour.
Yes.
And you can use corn, or you could add banana, you know, instead of the pumpkin. You could add blueberries instead of the pumpkin or the banana. You know, so the sky's the limit.
Plethora of different. Well,
That's
what you
right.
Want, yes.
So now.
So you made a loaf. Is this pumpkin bread?
Yes,
also?
it is.
You made a small mini loaf.
Yep. My basic recipe makes a dozen muffins, but with adding the cup of pumpkin into it, so it increases the batter a little bit. So you can see I actually have a little extra batter, so we could put that into a little mini loaf pan if we wanted to. But we can pop these in the oven, like 400 degrees. 15 minutes, they're ready.
15 minutes.
Boom. By the time your kids get the table set and ready, you're good to go.
You're ready to go.
Yep.
15 minutes
Yep.
is it?
Yep.
And voila. By the magic.
There's our
we have
there's our pumpkin muffins ready to taste and eat. How's that?
Beautiful.
Yep.
Absolutely beautiful.
So
and nutritious, good for us.
Oh my gosh, yes. So full of all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the fiber. Fiber is the single most nutrient missing for most America, and that's what's causing so many of the bowel issues.
How do you think we got to that, Sue, though? I mean, why do people...
Convenience.
We have so much knowledge these days.
Well, it's all about, you know, preventing food from spoiling, letting it sit on the shelf forever.
Feeding
and so
the masses,
taking that bran and, taking that bran and germ out so the flour wouldn't spoil, so it could sit on the shelf forever. It was probably one of the worst things nutritionally that we could have done.
For people. Do you feel like that's why we have so much stomach problems today?
Yes, I know it is. The digestive issues, the cleansing, I mean, you know, that is so important. The irritable bowel, the spastic colon. We've seen that corrected from changing to this bread in 2 weeks.
Well, Sue, we got to take a short break from the kitchen, but we're going to come right back in a moment more with Sue Becker with Bread Beckers. And are we going to cook?
I think we're going to make some yeast bread next. All right?
Okay, you don't want to miss it. Come back with us.
Well, hi, we are here in the prayer room, and we're excited about the opportunity to be able to pray over some of these precious requests. We have Cornelius here, and we have some individuals that are believing for some things. Can you tell us a little bit of what they are believing for?
Yes, we have people calling in for their families and their daughters and their sons and for healing. You know, we've been having like a little flu bug going around, so people a lot of folks dealing with bronchitis and different things like that. So they just want to be encouraged in prayer and believing for God for healing.
Yes.
And that's basically what it's all about, because God is Jehovah Rapha. He's the Lord that healeth us.
Yes, He is.
So all we have to do is believe by His stripes. The Bible tells us that we are healed.
Amen, amen. So we are just touching and agreeing with all of these requests. We are encouraging you to continue to call in so that we have the opportunity to pray and to believe with you for healing, for deliverance, for the testimony of being drug-free for years. We honor God. There is nothing impossible to those who believe, and so we are continuing to stand in the gap for you. So lean in, trust God, continue to believe that nothing, again, is impossible with Him. So we just thank you for tuning in tonight. God bless you. God bless you. We're going to continue to pray. Pray for these. God, we just thank you. Thank you again that your name is greater over every other name, over the name of cancer, over the name of flu, viruses. Jesus Christ bore every sickness and disease. And so we're going to go back. Thank you so much for that, praying with us. We're going to go back to Sherry, who's in the kitchen with Sue Becker. God bless you.
Bless you.
Oh, you caught me. I've been eating one of Sue's delicious muffins right out of the oven, too.
Oh,
and you know what? I'm getting healthy
the
whole time. Sue, this is marvelous, but you know what? We're going to make some other things, and I just wish our audience could smell this.
Oh, yeah, we're going to make that.
What is this? I know it's got garlic in it.
It's a basic yeast bread dough with some garlic, onion, sesame seed, and poppy seeds. Sprinkle on top.
Lord.
So easy.
the aroma, I'm telling you, if you were here, you'd go over here and eat one of these right now. But tell me, what are we going to make now?
Well, we're going to mix up some yeast bread dough, and typically yeast bread needs to be kneaded and it needs a rising time. But we are going to do a couple little rule breakers here. This bread was baked in what's called a bread cloche. So I brought that today. We're going to do some of the dough in there. And
now, wait, explain bread cloche.
A bread cloche mimics a brick bread oven, and you can see it's wet in here from where I baked those loaves.
Oh, wow.
As the moisture of the dough is, as it's baking, the moisture evaporates off and actually causes the bread dough to rise and bake all at the same time.
Wow.
So we're going to heat the base for that before we start mixing our bread dough here. And I brought a second one. So we're going to just pop the base to the cloche in the oven.
Who's my new best friend?
So we're going to make bread. We're going to mix up a big batch of bread dough, and this was the way I had to do it at home when my children were all at home, and we were home all day. So they were eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home. I had to be able to make a big batch of bread dough at once, and then I could divide that dough into hamburger buns or dinner rolls or whatever.
You
raisin
make
bread.
Buns.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, wow.
They're just rolls. They're all made out of the same bread dough. So for me, a large mixer was my go-to. And this is the Ankeshroom mixer.
This is the most wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Mixer. I'm familiar with this, but I'm sure our audience, a lot of people don't know. Explain how this works,
It's
Sue.
made in Sweden. It's been made there since 1940. It was designed by Electrolux of Sweden back in 1940. And a company now, Ankeshroom Motors, builds these machines there in Sweden. It's the largest non-commercial mixer sold. You can see the very unique design.
Unique design.
Yeah, scraper goes here.
You wouldn't know it's a mixer.
Roller goes here. So, and the bowl turns. And also, if I plug it in.
Yes, that does help.
It does help.
You know, looking at it, you would never, I would have not known when I first saw this that it was a mixer. And the unique thing about it is that it...
The open design.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just...
So I can add my flour as I go. With bread dough, cakes, cookies, whatever you're baking, that's very, very important. So we're going to start with, we're going to mill some flour. What I thought is I would just mill a little bit here, and then I've gone on and milled a big canister of flour. The capacity of the Wonder Mill is 8 cups of grain here, and that mills into 12 cups of flour. And for this, I'm going to do a big batch of bread dough here, enough to make 4 loaves of bread. But so I needed my full 12 cups of flour. But again, we're just very easy to mill the flour. Just insert the tube here to the canister. And then this is red wheat. We're going to use a hard wheat here because we've got to have that high protein to make our yeast bread. And so we're going to turn our mill on, pour our grain in. That's basically all you have to do. We could fill this all the way up with a full 8 cups of grain. When you hear that pitch go off, you just cleaned your mill, so it's done. So there's nothing more I need to do to this. And of course, I just milled a little bit of flour. So there's my flour that we freshly milled.
You see the bran?
Yep, you can see the bran.
I just had one of your delicious cranberries in this.
Oh gosh,
wonderful.
Yes, aren't they wonderful? So here, I milled beforehand enough flour to make this big batch of dough, but look at that. So that's about 12 cups of flour, so that was 8 cups of grain. Now, why do we need a hard wheat to make yeast bread? Hard wheat has the higher protein content in it, and that is what actually allows the dough to develop gluten. You know, it's a misnomer to think that gluten is in grains. Gluten is actually something that is formed when you wet flour, and those protein structure, particularly to wheat, is what forms gluten. And that's why wheat has maintained the king of yeast bread making throughout time.
Yeah.
It's not something that's evil and added to grains. Yes, commercial bread, it's added to that bread extra gluten, and that's a problem. But just the naturally occurring proteins that are in your flour that form that gluten structure, that's what you actually need for yeast bread. So let's get started. We need warm. Yeast is a living organism, and it likes warm and moist, so I've heated up some water back here.
You might notice that Sue has the most wonderful cooking utensils.
This is one of my favorites,
really
and the water kettle.
wonderful.
Perfect temperature to develop gluten is 130 degrees. That's a little hot for your yeast, so I go ahead and put this 130 degree water, and my water kettle has a variable temperature control, so I can set it to
I
heat
have
it
to have
right
that.
up to 130. So
I have to have this and this.
That's our warm water, and the cold stainless steel bowl is already cooling that down, and see, as it evaporates off, it's creating steam, and that creates the perfect warm and moist environment. No matter how I'm making yeast bread, whether it's a machine, by hand, or with a bread machine, I put my liquids in first. So I'm going to do my oil and honey again. I've measured it in my measuring cup here.
The wonderful measuring cup.
The wonderful measuring cups. And you know, see, I use oil and honey out of gallon jugs, and it really is nice to be able to look down on the oil and honey or the measurements instead of having to look at the side.
Well, do you use a certain honey?
I use a raw unpasteurized honey. We get our honey from a supplier in South Georgia, and it's just the main thing you want to look for is raw unpasteurized.
Raw unpasteurized, yeah.
Okay, so we've got our water, our oil, our honey. I'm going to put egg. You don't have to use an egg, but I think the egg makes the dough a little bit softer. So I just go ahead and add it. Like I said, you don't have to. You can leave the eggs out. All right, and now
That's
we're going
so
to add
easy.
our salt. Yeah,
So
you're not having to, you know,
up
go
and
around.
down. You know how you do the opening, and you can't get things in there because everything's in the middle.
So this is our off-on switch, so we're just going to turn it on, and we're going to start on a fairly low speed. The roller is leaning up against the side of the bowl. The bowl is actually turning the roller. So we've got everything in there but our yeast and our flour. So because the liquids are still kind of warm, I'm just going to start adding my flour.
Now, Sue, this arm here keeps the batter off. Is that it?
It
Off the rim
scrapes the bowl.
Is that
Yes. How many times
marvelous?
have you said, stop your machine, scrape up from the bottom?
Yes.
Also notice the straight design of the bowl instead of being a funnel-shaped bowl where everything just kind of naturally migrates to the bottom. This is a straight bowl. So it's always mixing, turning, scraping. So now
I wish you could. Oh my gosh, it's too good. It's too wonderful. I mean,
come to your class.
It's just too good.
Yeah. So I'm just going to start adding my flour here. This recipe that I'm making today is my basic bread dough recipe. It's in either one of my cookbooks over there, and I'm actually doubling the recipe. So it should take about 9 cups of flour, and I don't even know how many I've added. Probably about 4 or 5.
I think 5.
Yeah, I've done this in my sleep almost, you know. So now at this point, when that batter starts getting a little thick there, I go ahead and I add my yeast, because now this has brought the temperature down of that water to the perfect temperature for my yeast. It's not going to kill it. Too hot, it kills the yeast. Too cold, the yeast doesn't grow and thrive and won't make the bread rise.
And you're sprinkling it. You're not all at once.
Yeah,
it
mixes it in. So now with my batter so thick, I'm going to just lock this roller away from the side of the bowl, and I'm going to continue adding my flour. What I'm looking for
is a certain consistency with it. Is that?
And I've discovered with this mixer that if I just keep adding flour till I get within a half a cup or so of what the recipe says I need, then when I take this roller in, I should see the dough move away from the side of the bowl. And I'm not quite there yet.
But isn't that cool? I mean, can you see this? How this just
most mixers use a dough hook to knead bread dough, but a dough hook kneads by pulling and stretching. The roller kneads very much like your hand, and you'll see as the dough starts getting thicker, this is just going to knead like this gentle movement. And for that reason, you can get away with a little softer dough. Softer dough means softer bread.
Where has this been all my life?
I know, in Sweden. So, all right, so now, see what it just did? Now it looks like a great big giant bagel going around the middle there. I know that I have enough flour. So here's the coolest part. My husband says I have a thing for expensive timers. So I've got all my flour in. I know I've got all my ingredients. It needs to knead now 10 minutes or so to develop that gluten. So I'm going to just set my timer for for 10 minutes, and it's going to mix.
It has a timer also.
Yes, and it'll turn itself off. So when my kids were all at home, this is where I'd go do a load of laundry, come back and do some schooling with the kids, and I know that my mixer would just knead the dough and turn itself off. So now there are bread machines out there, and bread machines are very handy and convenient for a lot of people. And by a bread machine, I mean an auto bakery where you can easily just put all the ingredients in, push the button, you know, and come back to a baked loaf of bread. It'll warm it, knead it, rise it, bake it. And those are convenient. But for me, this was a valuable tool because I can make a big batch of bread dough. So we don't have to stand here and wait for the dough to knead. There's a big batch of bread dough that I made earlier, and we're going to divide it up, and we can divide it into make a cinnamon loaf, a plain loaf, some rolls, and then I'm going to do one batch of bread in the cloche. So we'll actually have that shortly. So I'm just going to turn this big batch of dough, and it's risen. Yeast as it's feeding on the sugars in both the honey and grains have natural carbohydrates. The yeast feeds on the wheat and produces carbon dioxide. Those stretchy strands of protein called gluten trap that yeast, and that's what makes the dough rise. So okay. We're gonna and
while you're this is a wonderful product.
Yes, it is.
Too,
it's a silicone mat. It sticks to the counter very nicely. I mean, not stick, but it doesn't shift around like plastic mats do. You could do it right on your counter, but this keeps the mess on the mat.
And so this is at your store.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, in Woodstock,
Georgia. This is at the store.
Yep.
I shall be there shortly.
Yes. We've got a class coming up this weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now tell me, are there any testimonials about the bread?
Oh my gosh, that is what got me so excited. You know, when I started in 1991, I just started for my family. And I started making the bread for my family, and I already told you about the health benefits just to my family. Well, then I have to share it. You know, we're supposed to share our bread with others. Yes. And so I began to bake bread for other people. And the next thing I know, people were calling me going, it's the bread, it's got to be the bread. That's the only change in my diet I made at the time. And one woman I'll never forget, in fact, she was the first testimony. She's told me that, in fact, I answered the phone, hello, and she goes, it's the bread, it's got to be the bread. I'm like, who is this? And she said, my cholesterol dropped 85 points in a month, and all I changed was the bread. And that's what really started my journey. I pulled out my biochemistry.
That is
oh, yes.
In this country,
it's a huge problem. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America. And yet the Bible tells us that God gave man bread to strengthen and nourish the heart. Heart disease and high cholesterol was not an issue until after 1920, when white bread had then become the norm for everyone. So I pulled out my textbooks, my biochemistry books, and I'm like, what is in whole grains that would do this? You know, that would bring someone's cholesterol down that rapidly. And I found out that all the B vitamins, inositol-choline, niacin, vitamin E, which is a known natural antithrombin, blood thinner, anti-clotting agent, it's all there. It's all in whole grains. In fact, whole grains are the richest food source of vitamin E that there is. And
so her cholesterol came down 85
points in 1 month.
That's huge.
I've had people tell me that also their HDL, which is very hard to get to go up, that's your cholesterol you want to be higher, that theirs has gone up like 10 points in just 2 weeks. And their doctor's like, okay, what have you done?
Yes.
And so
now you're weighing this.
I am, so that I'll know. I've done 2 recipes, so I want to kind of get it divided fairly evenly. And it's not necessary, it's just something that I kind of like my loaves to all be about the same size. I kind of got started when I was making bread for other people. I wanted to make sure that everybody was getting the same size loaf.
Is this your bread divider?
Oh yes, that's a dough divider. It's called in the baking world, it's called a bench scraper, and it's really nice because you can divide your dough, you can cut things, but then you also can scrape up and clean up at the end. So that makes it very handy. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to divide. So I've divided my dough now in two because I told you I doubled my basic bread dough recipe. So this is a recipe and this is a recipe. So out of this recipe, I'm going to divide it and put it in my bread cloche.
And you do four separate.
I usually do, but today I think I'm going to just do the 3 in the bread cloche, and then I'll show you how I made my dinner rolls out of a little bit of this dough. So.
Now, how long can you leave it in the cloche, Sue?
Well, we're going to pop it right in the oven. So that's the beautiful thing about the bread cloche is we've got that base heating up. Normally, once you shape bread dough and put it in your pan, it has to rise.
Yes.
Or you're going to have a doorstop.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But the cloche, I call it my rule breaker. We've got that hot base in the oven. So now all I have to do is shape my loaves here, and we could have kneaded this into one big ball of dough if we wanted to, and just shaped it like that. But I'm going to do it into 3 balls of dough here, and these are just
the dough though smells nutritious.
Yeah,
Smells
and see how
delicious.
stretchy it is. That's what it means by developing the gluten. That's what it makes the bread stretchy, and it's like a balloon. It'll trap that carbon dioxide and blow up. You know,
and taste delicious.
Taste delicious.
And be very,
exactly
very
right.
Good for you.
So we're going to just, I'm going to give a little spritz of water. The water will do a couple of things. It'll hold my seeds in place when I sprinkle
now
these
that's
with
water.
seeds. That's water. That's olive oil.
Okay.
We have those little bottles at our store, and then I'm going to sprinkle it with my seeds that are so yummy and delicious.
It smells delicious.
Minced garlic, minced onion, sesame seeds, and poppy seeds.
Oh man.
Okay. Now here's what I'm going to do. We'll get our bread cloche, the base, out of the oven. It's hot.
You have a pot holder.
I did.
Yes.
And those little balls of dough that you see there were that size when I put them on the cloche. So now just real quick, we put them on the hot cloche. Just remember it's hot.
Yes.
And we're going to put our lid on.
What do you heat that on?
I do 375.
Okay.
Just heat the base, and then we're going to pop this in the oven without letting it rise. Now here's how the cloche works.
Yeah, how does that?
Okay, so the warm base heats the dough up, but putting the dome lid on top protects it from getting too hot too quickly, okay?
Does it shorten the time?
Yes, it's going to rise and bake in 35 minutes.
In 35 minutes?
So,
wow.
From mixing dough to bringing hot, delicious bread out of the oven, less than an hour.
Wow.
Because it only takes 5 minutes or so to knead the bread dough when I do a small batch like that, and then I put my cloche base in the oven right when I start kneading the dough, and then once it's done, shape it, pop it back in the oven with the lid on, and it rises and bakes all at the same time.
You're
Pretty
amazing.
Remarkable.
You are amazing,
Pretty remarkable.
Sue Becker.
So look at our dough. It's forming a ball, so we can see that it's looking kind of smooth and shiny, much like this dough. It's really almost finished kneading. When that's what you're looking for. See
when
how
it breaks away?
well, not just that. When
just the dough.
See how smooth it looks now and shiny. Bread recipes will tell you to knead the dough until it's smooth and elastic. So, all right.
Wow.
So now I have my dough here, and I'm going to just divide it into two loaves, and I'm going to put those loaves in my traditional bread pan, and now those will have to sit on the counter or in a warm place and rise before I bake them. Okay? So we're going to divide it into half.
Well, you know what, Sue? We only have 30 seconds left.
Oh my. Well, we don't have enough time to finish these.
Actually, they just told me we got 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, we can just shape these into loaves loaves of bread. I can roll this one out and smear it with some butter and sprinkle some cinnamon in there. And this is what we'll have after we rise and bake.
Beautiful. Oh, and it cut off your bread. Your dough just cut off too.
So there's my loaf of bread. That's a plain loaf, and then this is a cinnamon honey loaf.
Tell the people out there how they can reach you.
breadbeckers.com, and we're in Woodstock, Georgia. Come see us. We have cooking classes. Please go to our website, request our free CDs, because we only touched lightly on the nutritional benefits.
Yes, right
in
here.
the 25 years that we've been teaching, this is the one you want to get. We've seen cholesterol lowered, blood sugar stabilized, IBS, irritable bowel, spastic colon, completely corrected in 2 weeks, energy levels,
that's a problem.
sickness and disease, lupus reversed.
No way.
Yes,
wow.
Absolutely amazing.
That is amazing.
Every nutrient here to sustain life is in the bread. Jesus compared himself to bread for a reason.
He is the bread of life.
And this should be bread. You know, we're told to not eat bread. But bread should be, real bread should be the first step of any health journey.
Well, I know you agree with me when I say that Miss Sue Becker is an amazing woman. A woman with 9 children, has her own business, cooks, makes nutritional bread, can do cooking classes, has a job. Is just an amazing woman, and we were so delighted to have you, Sue.
We love what we do, and we're here to help people on this journey.
Isn't that what it's...
We'll come alongside you.
Our walk with the Lord is to help and to encourage, to do what we can for others, because, you know, God's been good to us.
Yes, He has.
So we try to be good to others, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
How about a hug?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It was my pleasure.
Well, I don't know about you, but I do love the smell of baking bread. Jordan, do you like bread?
Absolutely, and fresh.
Fresh bread. Well, I have some right here, and I tell you, before I know you would like some, but you're going to be playing something for us. Tell us a little bit about the name of the song.
Yep, so the song is called Don't Know.
Don't Know. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and save some for you, okay?
Great.
But thank you so much, Jordan B. Band. Don't Know.
Thanks.
Don't know that I want to be afraid, roaming around now this place. I feel kind of dreary deep inside. Got nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, Lord. Wanna love you, Lord. Wanna be with you, my Lord Jesus Christ, yeah. Wanna love you, Lord, right now. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Don't know that I want to sneak around, winding my way up to an empty town. I feel kind of downcast, no crown, empty promises, running around, yeah.
you so much for tuning in. I love the first segment with the bread. Thank you so much, Sue and Sherry. We are excited about this segment, excited about who we have here this evening. But before we talk with our guests, we want to go back to music with Jordan. Have you enjoyed that? I've really enjoyed that. And we are so thankful to have him here on this evening. So you're going to tune in, you're going to sit there, we're going to enjoy, and we're going to listen and see what it is that God has to say to us in this segment. You do not want to miss this.
Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen. 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 Hallelujah. Amen. He was a young boy in the temple talking to all the wise men. They were lady, fascinated just at those things that he taught. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen. 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 Hallelujah. Amen. He was a young man in a boat, child. All his people on the shoreline. He was a preacher. He was teaching, yeah, all those things they needed to know. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen. 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 Hallelujah. Amen. Is he speaking to your heart now? Telling you how to win if it's him? Open your heart now, open it wide enough, let him in. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen. 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 Hallelujah. Amen. Amen, amen, and amen.
Hallelujah and amen. Thank you so much, Jordan, and your band for that. That was incredible. Well, I am sitting here tonight, and I'm really excited to have an opportunity to meet this fabulous woman of God who's going to share with you tonight her story. So just really, again, continue to lean in, and I know God has a word for someone out there tonight. So Rhea, Brashear, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you. You know what? We never know how our life is going to turn out. We never know the path that God has set for us or established for our lives. But I believe that you represent something that God did that was totally unexpected with your life and your journey. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to get to where you are today.
You mean as in this chair right now?
As in this chair.
Okay, here we go. So to encapsulate this whole journey would be longer than we have time for. So let me just get right to it. I'm a mom. And I think if you are a mom, that just speaks volumes to how the journey starts. And so I'm a wife and a mother. And from that, I think God has used my life in a way to exhibit grace and compassion and to find out what love really is. And so what I've been able to do is take the passions He gave me professionally and mold them and create them and express them in a way that connects with other mothers. So what does that really sound like? What does that really mean? Well, what it means is I'm a teacher, and I have a background as a Montessori teacher, and I love Montessori education. And for all those Montessorians out there, whoop, whoop, it's a great way. It's a hands-on way of learning that values the child and respects the child and honors the child to create themselves. And so when you look at that and put that in the context of what we're looking at today in our world of education, we're really looking at a way of teaching that goes back to a natural way of looking at what childhood should be. So before I was a mom, I was a Montessori teacher. So I knew I would do that way with my children, and I'm so glad I had made that decision because my firstborn child had a difficult entry. There was birth trauma that created a lot of issues that typical moms don't have to deal with, but I had the opportunity to walk through therapies and evaluations and all kinds of things that softened my heart to the paths that differences cause. And so I lived it, and I went through all that Atlanta had to offer for what my child needed, but I wasn't able to find that opportunity to see my son as a complete whole. Everybody did their pieces of what they knew to do, but it was a challenge to find that path. So my background in education and my interest in development and all of these things was coming now into my life focus, and I had a second child, so I have David and I have Katie. And so I walked this path of looking at what my child needed and realized that he was 8 years old, had just been able to say his name for the first time, and it was, why is this so hard? And I was alongside other mothers in waiting rooms and other areas that had the same journey. And it's like, well, how come no one's doing anything about this? Well, we need to do this. So I went back to education, back to Montessori, and began looking at that through the lens of neurodevelopment. When he was 8, I hooked up with the Handel Institute out of Washington State and trained directly with the founder, Judith Bluestone. And my son was her private client. And so for 4 years, I had this master training me in her approach that's now done internationally and was at that time as well. And my son progressed from being 6 months behind in reading level to being 4 grade levels ahead. In 6 months, no medication, and it was completely honoring and respecting him, and I was hooked. And then I learned how to do that. So I was helping other moms look at their children in this way, and then I put it back into education. So my path was very unique because a Montessori teacher, along as that's unique, then a mom who's a Montessori teacher, and then a mom who's a Montessori teacher who also does neurodevelopment, I'm a whole different kind of thing. So what has led me here today, I think, is this long journey. And I'm actually from Atlanta, but I currently live in Southwest Georgia. I'm in Thomasville, Georgia. And so when I was invited to come, it was like, there must be some reason why I'm going up to Atlanta to talk about what I'm doing way down in Southwest Georgia. If you don't know where Thomasville is, I'm 10 miles north of the Florida state line, directly above Tallahassee. So Thomasville is way down. But it is something that I think God has called us to do, and so I am hopefully bringing a new sense of awareness and educational concepts wherever I go, and where I am right now is I'm in Thomasville.
That's awesome. I believe that you are. We had an opportunity to talk a little bit about what you're doing, and there's so much to be shared. And I do believe we recognize our society and what's going on in terms of education, and you are actually bringing out some very fundamental things that need to start happening in terms of the developmental process of our children. And so we can obviously see that this is a call of God for this time and this season. We were talking about the Montessori, but then also even more unique than that is that you're also a Christian in terms of being able to integrate. Tell us a little bit about that you were talking about.
Okay, so I came back to this idea about doing the school and integrating this because I saw that education had nothing to do with cognition. And that might be like, what? But truly, education is just trying to stick information into a person, and it is the cognition that is the receptacle that's able to receive that. And so what I began noticing before I became a mom, and now 20 years into it, I'm just convinced that what we are thinking we're doing as educators is that we are working with intact, properly formed vessels for cognition. And we're trying to put the information in. And what I'm now seeing is that the cognitive part of what we're doing for creating children is not intact. We have gotten away from development so far away that now children as young as 3 are entering preschool unequipped, ill-equipped, unformed. What creates the capacity for that cognitive development and ability to receive education is not ready. Why? What happened to this? And so how do we get back to creating these kind of environments that allow this to happen? So neurodevelopment is something that goes beyond just, it's really getting back to how the body was created and what God intended. And the way I see it is that this is what God's plan was, that He created in us innate patterns of development and progression through movement that create a connection between the body and the brain. And if you are a mom without any background in this may sound unusual to you, but there are doctors and therapists that understand this, that it is the movement that creates the connection from the brainstem to the cortex through the thalamus, and how all of this kind of works together. See, I'm not your typical mom or teacher.
Okay. That's okay.
So I created a preschool almost 10 years ago that was a Christian Montessori environment for special needs children ages 3 to 5. And that Morning Star Montessori was a catalyst for me. I had like 5 years to kind of incubate my ideas and develop them and grow them. And I actually got to meet some fabulous families, had a wonderful time. From there, I springboarded to a private practice where I became a private therapist more focused on training and developing other people around me as professionals to go out and do this work. And that's Start Right Educational Services. And I carried Start Right Educational Services to Thomasville when my husband and I were transferred for his job a couple years ago. So now I've opened up an office in Thomasville, and I'm a teacher at Thomasville Christian School. And I have found an incredible community of people dedicated not only to the Lord, but also to the child. And so we are opening up this idea of getting back to the roots of education, putting God first. And that's important for me. And looking at what God created with each child being an individual, and how to honor that in such a way by looking at the developmental needs. And so when you take there's nothing more precious than a mom handing you her child and saying, help me raise this little person, and you get to be the first step in a family's journey into introducing that child to the world. That's why I stay in early education, because it is the foundation for creating a lifelong love of learning. But you can't love learning if it's hard for you. And what's happening is we're having so many children being asked to leave kindergarten, being medicated, being all these things before they're 6 years old. And so you have to begin asking, what is it? It can't just be the child, because I mean, to be honest with you, a child is the closest thing we have to heaven. He made them, as we know, knitted them together.
That's right.
So
in that inward part.
You know, I don't believe that there's ever a deficit of attention. I get really upset when I hear that, because it means that God didn't finish something, and my God is complete, my God is whole, my God doesn't create incomplete things. So there is no deficit in a child. There may be a difference of priority, and it's that difference that I'm looking at is I keep doing this for this vessel of cognition where I'm going deeper. So I can help moms and dads and other teachers look at children developmentally, physically.
I love that you're saying that, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about our society in terms of, I feel like it's, and you can agree with this if you like, with regard to, I feel like there's carbon copies, like we're trying to make carbon copies of everyone, right? And so the word does talk about, you know, being fearfully and wonderfully made, as you just stated, in terms of, you know, being formed in your mother's womb, the inward parts, and God knowing that. But, you know, God has a unique design for each one of us. And so it feels like we are moving away from some of the fundamentals of education and being able to really invest the time and the energy in identifying the uniqueness and the different distinctions that we all have, so that we could function in this world and be successful and thrive and all of those things that you're talking about. So I love that you are in this field. You know, I have a grandson now, and so it's very important in terms of education and where he's going to be and being able to set him on a course. And I believe that there are parents out there as well who are trying to look for resources and individuals who understand what it is that you're saying.
Well, that's that unique part that I think, because I had walked that path, I really hear those mothers' concerns with a very different kind of ear. And so I have some pictures that I can show that kind of give you an example of, well, what is she really talking about? And so before I get there, though, I want to go back and give a little more background. So movement creates the foundation for how the brain wires itself. And if you think about what does that mean? Well, we have movement in, light waves and sound waves come in, and they get processed through different organs in the brain. The vestibular system, it's in the inner ear. It helps regulate balance, and the vision and audition kind of connect through that system. It's about the size of your pinky and pinky nail. Then we have the other areas of the brain, the amygdala, which helps regulate rhythms in the brain. You have the thalamus, and you have the superciliculus. All these things
God is amazing.
work together, right? All this is happening all at one time. And so, but what wires those together? It is the early movement that we do in utero and the first year of life that creates the capacity for that. That's in the brain stem. It's the first thing to develop in utero, and then we move forward, brain stem to cortex. And it's that progression. So there are movement patterns called primitive reflexes, and this is a very small part. Okay, I pulled out one piece that I could talk about tonight in a more specific way to give you kind of a walk-away, take-away picture from today. But it's these patterns that I see repeatedly that are the harbingers of why the brain, the receptacle for cognition, is having the incomplete whole. So there's some pictures about reflexes, and there's the primary reflexes are also called primitive reflexes. But there's like the core 8. There's the Moro, there's the spinal galant, there's the Babkin, there's the Babinski. The Moro is like the whole body. The spinal galant goes down the back of the spine. The Babinski is on your feet, the Babkin's on your hands. But there's one that always kind of pops up for me, and it's the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, the ATNR. And there are some pictures that are here tonight for that. And so what it should be, at about the 4th month of life in an infant, if you take and pull their arm this way, the head will naturally turn, and this arm will go up, and so will the leg. Can't do it in my dress, but that is a pattern that you're supposed to do as an infant, because this is connecting that both sides of the brain are doing something different, and the body. And we're beginning to do long-range divergent vision. It's developing those muscles that control the eyes for that kind of reading. What that translates to is when you're in 3rd grade, look at your paper, look at the board, look back at your paper. We've done the convergent, close-knit vision when we are doing suck reflexes like nursing and that kind of thing, bottles. That's coming together for our focal vision, but then the long-distance vision is that divergent. Okay, so when you have a child who's having a hard time with reading comprehension, can't remember what he just read when he read the whole passage, is mixing up numbers, is having all these problems with schoolwork, I oftentimes see children in postures and positions that should be finished when they are an infant. So when you see this fencer's pose in like a small child, like a 6-month-old, that's okay. But when I see it in 3-year-olds, that they still have this pattern of moving this way, what happens is you could be a child in a preschool classroom and you could be reaching for something, but when you have this retained pattern and you reach this way, this arm goes back and you don't even know it's going back. It's an unconscious pattern. You hit the kid behind you. You knock over the paint. Something happens. And then it becomes a disruption, it becomes a disturbance, it's an uncontrollable movement. This is just one. There's a lot more. So when your body never got the movement, was it a car seat, was it a Johnny jump up seat, was it not enough tummy time, was it any number of things?
This is amazing.
Any number of things can happen.
We actually are going to go back to music, but I know I have enjoyed and am enjoying this, and we are definitely going to come back to hearing a little bit more from Ray. But right now, what we're going to do is we are going to go to music. Have you enjoyed them?
My toe's been tapping all night.
I know.
I've been loving it.
I know, and so we're going to go ahead and go to Jordan B with the music in a couple of seconds. The song that they're going to be singing for this time around, you are certainly going to enjoy it. It's called Kneel Before the Throne, and that's going to bless us, I know. Kneel before the throne. Thank you. been. I do believe that you have been ministered to tonight. We want to thank Ray Brashear so much for coming tonight. You can find out more about her on the Facebook page that she has. And thank you for calling in for prayer. Thank you for everything that you have done tonight in terms of joining us. We do believe that God has spoken to you, and we just want you to encourage you in this new year to have hope and to know that God is with you. He is for you. Continue to believe that nothing is impossible to those who believe in Him. Amen. God bless you. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. My pleasure.
God bless you. Thank you, Samira. How nice to hear this conversation.